So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Skyrim? So let's start the series. All of Konoha is filled with a cool, calm breeze that blows through the village, picking leaves from one of the many trees that are scattered all over it. The breeze continues until it reaches the house of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, but this is not the Naruto that we have all grown to know and love. This is not the young, sun-colored kid who has won everyone over. 8 decades have gone by since the fateful war in which all of the shinobi world came together to fight Madara Uchiha. Life went on as usual after the war, with the exception of minor disputes between small villages. Tsunade eventually resigned from her role as Hokage to devote more time to helping at the hospital. She nominated Naruto as her successor after she retired, and naturally, there was no opposition. Following Naruto's promotion, Konoha had its best years in decades, as if Kami himself had bestowed an unspoken blessing on everything. After everything was restored and rebuilt, business flourished. Naruto's power was also fortunate because, at his best, he was praised as the greatest ninja the world had ever seen. He had even completely mastered his father's notorious Hiraishin no Jutsu, and he was even praised as the Orange Flash on the battlefield, exactly as he had promised. His fame had become so notorious that, decades after his death, young Genin would gaze upon his visage on the Hokage monument and yell to the sky, each promising to outdo him. However, that wasn't the only thing Kami bestowed upon our young hero. Naruto also gained insight that he had been lacking for years. As soon as things started to calm down, Naruto asked Hinata out on a date, and she accepted. They would eventually get married and have children together. However, decades have gone by since then, and Naruto has aged to the point that his muscles have lost their strength and he is only a shell of the powerful person he once was. Naruto lies on a bed in his prone position, exhausted from life. His golden hair has turned white due to aging, yet his breathing was steady and powerful despite his appearance. This was the scene that a shadowy figure first appeared. The strangest thing was that the figure had suddenly materialized out of nowhere, as if brought in with the breeze, even though they didn't enter the room through the door or the open window, which allowed a little breeze to flow through. The figure wore a plain black cloak with a black hood that covered every part of their body except their face. This was concealed by a bone-white mask that resembled a person's face and had no features other than 2 eye holes. The only other characteristic that allowed the person to be identified was the scythe they were carrying. They remained motionless and silent as they stood beside Naruto's prone corpse. For a considerable amount of time, the only sound in the room was the wind. Naruto said, causing the masked figure to move uneasily, "How long are you going to stand there?" "I didn't think you were awake, you looked so peaceful," they responded. The figure moved again, this time in bewilderment, and said, "Well, I was, up until you came in here. How could you sense me? I don't have a chakra signature, so no one should be able to sense me, let alone see me." When Naruto opened his eyes, he grinned mischievously and said, "That's because I'm close to dying, am I not?" "Shinigami-sama?" The shrouded figure couldn't contain his laughter. "So I'd been figured out, eh?" "I should have expected as much from you, Naruto Uzumaki," the Shinigami said, taking off his mask. Naruto saw Death's face for the first time, and was shocked to see a woman rather than a male as he had assumed. After that, she drew back her hood to reveal long, silky, dark hair. The cloak appeared to fold in on itself, leaving behind a black scarf that was body length. She wore a basic black sleeveless blouse and black ninja pants, and Naruto couldn't help but notice how gorgeous she was. Her face was as white as porcelain, but as soft and silky as the finest cotton. She smiled back at Naruto and knelt down by his bed. The remark caused Death to flush. "Well, this is a surprise. Here I was, expecting some ugly skeleton to come, chopping me to pieces, and Kami has seen fit to bless me one last time, with an angel," Naruto said. "Why thank you," But sadly, I came here on business, not pleasure. I know, so, are you going to kill me now? Normally, yes, but in your case, Naruto, Kami has seen fit to grant you a wish, a dying request, Death said, shaking her head. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle wheezily. A wish? He? What could he possibly hope for? Yes, he might wish for perpetual youth and become the best ninja again, but that would be a pointless endeavor. He would only be able to live forever without ever finding a companion, and he had already had a wonderful life. Death asked, "So, what's your wish?" while Naruto lay there in shock. What would he want? It was Death's turn to appear perplexed. How about feed the poor in peace to all mankind? Death rolled on the ground in laughter at Naruto's simple nod. Wait, you have one wish, to be granted by Kami himself, and you wish for that? She took a moment to gather herself before continuing the discourse. Okay, seriously though, what do you want? Naruto asked, his eyes lifting to the ceiling in thoughtful reflection. It took him a few minutes to speak. Naruto glanced at her again and said, I want a redo, with finality. Death's only response was, eh? I said I want a redo of life, Naruto replied. But to redo life is impossible, I can't just turn back the clock and let you relive your life like that, Death said emphatically with a snap of her fingers. You said anything, Naruto remarked with a cunning smile, and Death let out a resigned sigh. Alright, but if I'm to allow it, I'll need to know your reason why. Simple, I've laid in this bed long enough to look back on my entire life. I've watched all of my memories over and over, and the only conclusion I've come to is that if the deal you've given me is real, I want to go back and do life over once more. Death observed Naruto, looking for any indication of impurity. Men who frequently requested a second chance at life were self-centered and only desired one in order to prevent foolish mistakes, increase their power, or for any number of other self-serving reasons. However, what she found in Naruto's heart astounded her. The smile that formed on Death's face was one that could rival Naruto's own. It was a smile of pure joy and warmth that could heal any broken heart and remove any sadness from even the darkest of hearts. Naruto truly wanted a redo, not for himself but in an attempt to reach other people who, had he known at certain points, and save them before the darkness of their own hearts consumed them. Death answered with a smile that never left her face, okay, one redo on life, coming up. Really, said Naruto, unable to believe it. If he had been a little younger, he would have been jumping off the walls. He could travel back in time, repeat his life, and save more people this time. But Death went on, Naruto's attention returned to her, interested in hearing her words. I won't be able to send you back, right this minute, he said. Eh? I said, you'll have to wait. Death stared to the ceiling and tapped her finger to her lips, asking, okay? How long will I have to wait? After giving it some serious thought, she replied, a few years. Naruto exclaimed, what, more loudly than a particular pinky ever did. Well, the thing is, you're already dead, Death said confidently. Naruto blinked, and the world turned white. The exhaustion that had kept him bedridden for years just disappeared, and when he looked down at his weak body, he discovered something that completely shocked him. He now looked at the body he had at his best. He slowly sat up, as though expecting to discover that everything was a mirage, as though he would awaken at any moment in the thin, withered husk of a body he had become accustomed to. Instead, he discovered his previous strength, the power that he had used to defend all of Konoha during his years as Hokage, which appeared to have been centuries ago. He flexed his muscles after sitting up, checking each one for weakness. This is incredible, Naruto muttered, describing the abrupt shift in his body from chakra depletion to full Sage mode at his strongest. It felt strange to regain his former strength, but Death's final words struck him hard once more. Wait. I'm dead, he yelled again, but this time he also got to his feet. Death laughed and scratched the back of her head. Yeah, about that. In order for you to go through your life once more, you must turn back the clock by living another life, Death said. Eh? Naruto inquired. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, well, I can only turn back the clock so fast, but if I let you live a different life, for a while anyway, I can speed up the process. With a defeated sigh, Naruto said, not like I have much of a choice, now do I? Death's smile said it all. Okay, before you send me off to live another life or whatever, can you give me a sign when you're ready to send me back to the beginning? Hold on to something, Naruto-kun. I've heard this is quite an experience. Death said, nodding, I can do that, now here we go. She raised both of her arms, palms facing each other, and purple energy spiraled in between them until it formed an orb. The energy hummed, but it sounded as low and loud as a large predator's growl. Hold on. Hold on. You never told me the S. Naruto began violently swinging his arms, but he never got the chance to finish his sentence as Death launched the sphere at him, engulfing him. All that was visible to Naruto then was blackness. The next time Naruto woke up, he smelled ashes. He sat up, alert and prepared to fight anyone. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he saw nothing but the ruins of what he thought was a village. His body was lying in a heap of ashes, and he slowly got to his feet, being careful not to draw attention to himself in case someone happened to be nearby. He had to remind himself of what had happened, no matter how absurd it may seem, because it was a strange feeling for him to stand after being bedridden for so long. A chilly wind blew past Naruto, taking away his remaining warmth. It was then that he realized he was standing exactly as he had been the day he was born, stark naked. Not only had Death omitted the crucial details of how, when, and where she would fulfill his wish, but she had also taken him to a place where Naruto had no idea where he was. And he was bare as a newborn, and if the weather was any indication, in a burned-out village atop a mountain. Really? Naruto exclaimed to the sky. Naruto shook his head, but then he noticed a backpack close by. It was about the same size as the backpacks he was used to, but it appeared more rudimentary than most he had seen. The pack appeared to be made of leather, and the top of the sack was roughly tied closed by a thick cord made of more leather. He sighed and prayed to Kami in desperation that there would be some kind of clothing inside the backpack because it wouldn't be much of one otherwise. It was made of pure leather, which Naruto discovered upon closer inspection. Although leather was extremely durable, it did not always withstand the wear and tear that most ninjas required from a sturdy backpack, so Naruto was extremely curious as to where he was. Naruto opened the sack and undid the strap at the top. The first thing he saw was, in fact, a gift from Kami. He took out a black shirt and shorts, which were made of thick material. As soon as he put these appropriate clothes on, the cold winter wind that had ruthlessly tore away his warmth and comfort instantly lost some of its power. Naruto was relieved to have some kind of clothing on and kept taking things out of the sack. Naruto took stock of the sack's contents as soon as they were on the ground. He quickly discovered a pair of pants, shoes, and a fur-coated jacket, which he quickly put on in case Mother Nature decided to switch the weather from the overcast sky to a sudden blizzard. A new world, a new climate, who knows what might occur? Thinking to himself, Naruto, a map, 2 short swords, and a few vials of red liquid were among the other items in the sack. Naruto looked inside the sack again in case he had missed anything, and his hands accidentally found a small folded piece of paper. He unfolded the note and read it out loud. Naruto picked up the map and saw Death's helpful work, 2 locations circled in charcoal, one with the words "You are here" and the town's name next to it. Dear Naruto, sorry for the sudden transportation, wanted to get started on your wish right away, Hope you find everything in this backpack to be useful. Also, made a note on your map on where to go next, Naruto said. Helgen? Never heard of it, Naruto said to the ashes. He looked at the map and saw that the charcoal marking was connected to another town that was close to Helgen. Riverwood? Where in the elemental nations did she send me? He saw that Death had written "Go here" next to Riverwood. It's not like I have much of a choice, he shrugged. He put the short swords on his belt, packed everything else in the bag, and left. He soon discovered a gate leading out of the destroyed town and followed the stone-paved path. Naruto discovered that he was having fun as the path wound uphill for a while. This was the first time in years that he had been able to move freely without assistance from anyone or anything. As he left the abandoned town behind, he felt a strange sense of nostalgia that transported him back to his younger years, before he was a Hokage, when he was still green in the gills and wore a bright orange jumpsuit. Naruto couldn't contain his laughter as he recalled how proud he had been of wearing that jumpsuit and marveled at how skilled a ninja he must be to be able to hide while wearing it. He chuckled once more as he recalled how much of a fool he had been in his younger years. Naruto was startled out of his reverie when he sensed that there were multiple people around him. At first, he saw nothing, but he knew that they were well concealed among the trees that surrounded the path. As it turned out, one man emerged from behind a tree not far from Naruto. The man had a rather stringy frame and was about Naruto's height, but Naruto could tell he was just a thug and nothing scary. The man was currently holding a knife and scrutinizing its edge while obstructing Naruto's path. The thug said, "Hand over your gold and anything valuable, and I'll let you go," without even looking up. Naruto grinned and said, "Maybe I can have some fun with this man. Kami knows I've been dying for a fight." With an innocent, naive tone, Naruto questioned, "Gold? Valuables? What are those?" The thug looked up from his knife, his annoyance evident. Naruto smiled in his mind as the man readily fell into his trap, thinking, "Yeah, valuables, you know, things that are worth some money?" This was going to be enjoyable. The thug took a step back in surprise, clearly unaware of Naruto's identity and easily underestimating him. "I don't know if anything I have is valuable or not. Maybe your friends can help us?" "Though I don't know why they're hiding, I'm not that dangerous," Naruto responded, maintaining his innocent demeanor. A huge error. The individuals in question emerged from hiding, and Naruto saw them up close for the first time, evaluating each as they came into view. Two of the men appeared to his right. They both resembled the thug on the street, but they had strong muscles and well-developed kenjutsu skills, and their smiles and the swords in their hands conveyed malice. They were overly eager and likely accustomed to fighting helpless civilians, cannon fodder. She stood as motionless as a statue, and the person on his left, who was farthest away from the action, had her bow trained on Naruto's head. "If I leave her alone, she will cause trouble." The final man, who was also from Naruto's right, emerged from behind a tree a short distance away. At first, Naruto thought he was a tree in motion, but then he realized how big he was. He was easily over 6 feet tall, bald, and had a Zanbato-like weapon strapped to his back. Overall, if Naruto had been anyone else, he might have been intimidated or even afraid, but he just grinned. Naruto questioned, "Wow. Are you part giant or something?" The giant-like man merely grinned with amusement, but with a hint of malice. His bass voice burst out of his vocal cords, "Oh, so you're a joke teller, are you?" Naruto extended his hand and the giant shook it in an iron grasp, saying, "Yup. One of the best. I'm Naruto, how about you?" "I'm Elric, but people call me the Mancleave. Come up with something more original next time," responded Elric. The main thug responded, "Elric, shut up," and Naruto turned to face him again. The main thug appeared enraged, his face burning red with rage and his knuckles white from holding his knife. I'm going to ask you, one last time. Knowing that would drive the man over the brink, Naruto grinned and said, what was it you were asking again? That's it. Kill him, the thug roared as he charged Naruto. The other two men charged at Naruto, eager to spill the first blood. Naruto grinned and took Elric's hand tightly, swinging him around. The giant's body struck the first two men like a perfect club, and Naruto released his hold, sending all three men flying. The sound of satisfying thwacks accompanied the explosive snaps of shattering bones as each man's body collided with a tree. Elric was the fortunate of the three, since his head struck a tree and promptly knocked him out. For the first time in years, Naruto turned to the main thug and flashed a cunning, Cheshire-like grin. The thug saw Naruto for what he truly was, a demon reborn, and backpedaled as quickly as he could, tripping and dropping his knife. The thug stopped when he remembered something, and a smile spread across his face as he faced his final accomplice. The thug yelled, "Maria!" Kill him, expecting an arrow to pierce Naruto, but it never did. Naruto emerged from the trees with Maria draped over his shoulders, and the man turned to face the other Naruto who had emerged from the woods, who was still there, laying his accomplice's unconscious body on the ground. Naruto quickly vanished in a cloud of smoke, leaving the original Naruto standing in the road, and the final thug sat, dumbfounded. "What are you?" "A wizard," he inquired, as Naruto approached the man cautiously while remaining silent. He screamed, raising his voice an octave above normal, and Naruto lunged for the man, lifting him off his feet. The man choked, closed his eyes, and struggled to free himself from the iron grip on his neck. He opened his eyes and looked at Naruto once more, but his heart and efforts stopped abruptly. The thief's first observation of Naruto was his blonde hair and cerulean blue eyes, which were uncommon in Skyrim. Though they appeared calm, the amount of Ki force emanating from Naruto caused the thug to break out in a cold sweat. Naruto then chose to respond to the thief's previous question. The eyes he was staring into were completely lavender now, with gray circles growing outward from the pupil. They reminded the thief of ripples of water in a pond after throwing a stone in. The thief's body was thrown backwards with such force that he left a permanent imprint on the tree he collided with. On the battlefield, I am known as the Orange Lightning of Konoha. I am the living god of assassins. I am the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and you, my dear thief, are merely practice, Naruto said, his smile expanding as he placed his other palm on the thug's stomach. Naruto laughed as his lifeless corpse collapsed to the forest floor, saying, "Oh, how nice it felt to have my old strength back." He now needed to decide how to deal with these robbers. Following the fight, if one were to call the whooping Naruto had just delivered, Naruto looked around and discovered a very simple campsite, right behind a hill and close enough to the trail to be out of sight but close enough to notice anyone approaching. After searching the area and finding what he was looking for, rope and plenty of it, Naruto returned to see all 5 of the robbers still asleep. "Looks like I've got some work to do." A lone horse-drawn carriage travels down one of Skyrim's numerous stone-paved roads, led by a desolate and lonely man named Hod. His filthy blonde hair is raggedly pulled up into a ponytail, and his demeanor conveys a sense of failure. On his journey back from Falkreath, he used the drive as a diversion and to try to think of a way to tell his family about the disastrous business endeavor he had just gone through. He was prepared to sell this year's produce when he got in town, but Imperial guards were to halt him at the gates and seize half of his belongings. Why? The only thing Hod could do was watch them take it away. After that, he could hardly sell the remaining grain for what would be seen as a normal price. "We are led to believe you are aiding the Stormcloaks, and so, we are taking this to aid the Empire," Hod said. "Perhaps I'm being punished by the gods for assisting Ralof?" Just before he burst out laughing, Hod thought, yeah, Ralof might be a Stormcloak, but before all that, he was my brother-in-law. Besides, What was I supposed to do? Slam the door in his face and refuse to assist him when he needs it? Recalling Ralof's story of what had transpired in Helgen, he shuddered. Dragons, he had added. Hod had refused to believe it, but the expression in Ralof's eyes spoke only truth. The idea of dragons returning frightened him to his very core. It was one thing to fight an enemy hand-to-hand on the battlefield, but it was quite another to confront a creature 50 times your size that could either devour you whole or roast you like meat over a campfire. Almost home, Hod gazed down at the carriage seat in exhaustion, almost returning to Gerder's warm embrace and Frodner's smile. He looked up and saw the familiar sight of the 3 guardian stones off in the distance, sitting not too far from Riverwood, a friendly reminder of the unknown and unseen forces that encompassed Skyrim. Hod was pulled out of his reverence when he heard someone call out. When Hod's head jerked up, he looked around the hills to see where the sound was coming from. He soon discovered that it was a young man coming down the hill. His blonde hair, which was bright in the sunlight, and his crystal-clear eyes told him that whoever it was not your typical Nord. But wait, that path leads to Helgen. What was he doing up there? The man screamed once more, but Hod was unable to understand him. Against his better judgment, Hod stopped the carriage, wondering who this man was and what he wanted. The man eventually reached the side of the carriage, barely breathing, as if he had just been on a light jog rather than a downhill sprint. When he looked up, his smile conveyed genuine friendship and kindness. Naruto said, "Thanks for stopping," as he caught his breath. Still perplexed, Hod questioned, "Who are you, lad?" The young man extended his hand to Hod and said, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, but you can just call me Naruto." What? Oh, right. Naruto? I haven't heard that name before, Hod said, raising an eyebrow. My name is Hod, Hod said, taking the offered hand and shaking it firmly. It's not often that you meet a complete stranger in Skyrim who is friendly and tells you his full name. If it's possible, Hod could swear that Naruto's smile widened even more. That caught Hod's attention. Well, Hod, I know I just met you, but I have a favor to ask of you, you said. A favor? What kind of favor? Well, you see, I'm sort of, lost, and I need a ride to the nearest town. Mind giving me a lift? Hod looked closely at Naruto to make sure he wasn't hurting him. He was dressed in what appeared to be the typical Skyrim attire, a dark shirt underneath so that he had something to wear in the event that the weather was nice, which it was occasionally. However, what worried Hod the most were the 2 swords at Naruto's hips. Observing the direction of Hod's gaze, Naruto speculated on his thoughts. Naruto untied the swords and offered them to Hod, a jester who was rarely seen in Skyrim. Well, if it makes you feel any better, you can keep the swords till we get to town, if it eases your mind at all, Naruto said. It would be extremely foolish of the giver or a sign of great trust for another man for a complete stranger to entrust another stranger with his weapons. After grabbing the weapons, Hod gestured for Naruto to board. As he hurried back up the hill, Naruto cried out, 1 second, I've got to go back and get something. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, take off without me." Hod sat there in shock, wondering why he had left his swords behind. Naruto, what kind of man was he? Naruto did indeed descend the hill a few minutes later, but this time he was accompanied by Hod, who snatched one of the swords Naruto had left behind. "I may not be the best with a blade, but by Talos, I shall die like a genuine Nord." However, there was something off about this attack, and Hod didn't grasp what was truly going on until he took a closer look. After a group of Kage Bunshin, each carrying an unconscious thief in their arms, followed Naruto down the hill. 2 of them had to carry Elric, so Naruto led them to the back of the carriage and gave them instructions to throw the bandits there, leaving the Elric on top to hold the others down. When they were finished, Naruto repelled them and turned back to Had. It would have been an understatement to say that Had was shocked. Naruto stared at him and couldn't help but laugh a little, since the man appeared to have either been drinking too much or had experienced the most bizarre hallucination of his life. Had was unable to respond to Naruto's question, never seen someone do that before, other than to shake his head slowly. Naruto then started to giggle quietly as he turned to the passenger side of the carriage and boarded. When Naruto gestured for them to proceed, Had snapped out of it and restarted the carriage. "Shall we?" he inquired. Had questioned, "What kind of spell was that?" "I have never seen nor heard of such a thing being possible," his voice displaying his disbelief. Had went back to Naruto, this time completely speechless, and said, "Spell? What's a spell? You don't know what a spell is? Are you not a wizard?" "You're not the only one to ask that today, but truth be told, I have no idea what you're talking about." Had found it hard to comprehend how this young man, who knew nothing about the world of magic, could so easily cast a spell that no one had ever heard of or even heard of. Had he discovered a magic spell that had not yet been found? Had made the decision to change the topic of conversation. Naruto was left in the dark. "Okay, so how did you defeat the Iron Dagger Gang then?" "The who?" "They were a bunch of 5 bandits who appeared out of nowhere and then vanished without a trace. They were wanted in all of Skyrim for a variety of crimes, the most common being theft and murder." Had continued by explaining who they were and what they were known for. No matter how quickly the event occurred, each time a group of guards, irate villagers, or experienced adventurers went out to find them, they were either never found or, if they were added to the piles of corpses they left behind. The only one of them who was even remotely famous was simply called the Mancleaver. He is said to be a giant of a man, easily a head in height above the average Nord, with the strength of 3 men, and wielder of one of the largest blades in all of Skyrim, remarked Had. As Naruto listened carefully, he realized that the group Had was referring to was the same 5 bandits who were currently unconscious and restrained in the rear of the carriage. Naruto glanced at them again, wondering if these men were truly dangerous. "Great, I'm going to grow tired of this place very quickly if these men are the most risk I encounter." With real curiosity, Had inquired, "How did you take them out? You don't seem to have a scratch on you." "Well, I used that spell you saw earlier. Basically, I'd been through enough dangerous situations before that I built the habit of having multiple Kage Bunshin nearby, in case I get jumped," Naruto lied. Naruto had no idea what would have happened if he had told the man directly that he had thrown the large man around like a club or about anything else. "Kage Bushins? Is that the name of your spell?" Had nodded and had to agree, saying, "Well, in my language, its name is Kage Bunshin. In your tongue, it would translate out to Shadow Clone, quite handy in a pinch. Life would be a lot easier if he had that every time he needed an extra pair of hands." After they entered Riverwood via the gate, Had felt happier because he was at last at home. He drove the carriage back to the stables and returned the horse to its pen. Had was unable to complete his sentence, saying, "Well, this is Riverwood, not sure where you were headed but..." Naruto extended his hand again and said, "Actually, this is where I was headed, thanks," and Had accepted it without question this time. When a loud voice yelled, "Halt!" Naruto turned to see a man coming toward them. He wore a helmet that concealed most of his face. The only thing that would reveal the identity of the man to Naruto were the 2 eye holes, but even those were completely black. It reminded him of an ANBU in full uniform, concealing every detail from the public so that no one knew who they were. He was wearing armor that resembled metal scales, with a yellow scarf or tunic covering the majority of it. He had leather straps across his chest and waist, which were indications that he was carrying weapons, as well as a yellow circular shield with a metal rim. The shield itself featured a picture of a horse's head. Naruto had no idea who this man was or what his significance was, but he assumed he was a guard because of the amount of armor and weapons he was carrying. The man formed a beeline straight for the two. Naruto was the first to respond to the armored man's question. I have been told that you two were seen coming into town with a group of people tied up in the back of your carriage, is this true? Yes, we did come into town with people tied up in a carriage, and I was the one who tied them up. The helmet moved to confront Naruto directly, pun intended. Ironically, the main thug had threatened Naruto before. The guard screamed, "Explain to me, why did you do that?" So Naruto went around to the back of the carriage, grabbed one of the thug's hairs, and pulled up to reveal their face. "I give to you, the Iron Dagger Gang," Naruto declared decisively. The man started to blink and gradually regain consciousness, but Naruto saw this and instantly knocked him unconscious once more by punching out his lights. The guard sneered through his helmet. The guard gasped as Naruto reached up top, grabbed the bandit on top, and pulled him off in one swift motion. "What proof do you have?" This mismatch group could be any group of 5 bandits, Naruto sighed. The man fell to the ground with a loud thud, not even stirring from the drop. The guard was then unable to choose between looking at Naruto and the behemoth at his feet. All the guard could manage to escape was but that's, which means, how did? The guard stood there, staring at Naruto. "Yes, that's the man, Cleaver. It means that I've subdued their entire gang, ready for whatever punishment you've got. As for how I did it, trade secret," Naruto explained. After a lengthy pause, the guard shook his head and regained his composure. The guard assumed a contemplative stance, but Naruto already knew what to do. "Well, we have a problem then. We need to have these thieves tried, but sundown is soon and we won't be able to get to Whiterun in time to have them properly locked up," he said. When the guard asked him, "Do you have a safe location nearby?" "I know how to lock these fools up," he nodded and indicated the guard outpost, which was close to the village. Naruto then created a dozen Kagebushin and sent them off to their duties, and the guard stood there in awe of what he had just witnessed. His question, "What spell is that?" "I have never seen anything like it," caused Naruto to smirk slyly. As they were leaving, Had said goodbye to Naruto and went to his house, but Naruto sensed something was wrong and called out to him. When Had turned around, he saw that Naruto had thrown something at him. "Apparently no one has," Naruto said, "actually." Half of the clones grabbed the 5 still unconscious thieves and took them with them. Had grasped the item and sensed its familiar weight. Examining it, he found that it was a tiny bag of cash. Looking up, he saw that comforting smile once more. As he and his clones followed the guard, he exclaimed, "I found some money these thieves stole from people while I was searching their campsite, near where I got mugged. Figured you could use it a lot more than I could right now." Pulling on the rope that kept it closed, Had glanced down at the sack once more. He discovered that, had the Imperial Guards not taken half of it, he would have easily doubled what he would have received from the market. He couldn't help but chuckle, thinking, perhaps I will have good news for Girder after all. The guard escorted Naruto to a plain house in the small village, opened the door, and signaled for Naruto and his clones to enter. The house was as simple as it could be, with 2 beds on the wall to Naruto's left, a small fire pit in the middle, a few cabinets for storage, and other sparse furnishings. Naruto gestured for his clones to the right, and they began working. 6 of them yelled, "Doton, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, Earth Release, Double Suicide Decapitation Technique." As soon as they were done, they vanished into the ground, and the remaining 6 Bushin moved to where the first 6 were and held the thugs upright. 6 sets of hands reached up from the ground, grasping the thieves' ankles and pulling them down until only their heads were above the ground, like zombies crawling out of their graves. Soon after emerging like gophers, the 6 Bushin from underground joined their allies above ground. "That will be all, gentlemen. As always, good work," Naruto said as he saluted them. They returned the salute and dispersed him in tiny puffs of cloud. Naruto turned to face the guard, who had witnessed everything but was still in disbelief. As the guard pointed out, "You know a great many spells, Naruto Uzumaki, spells only known unto you." Naruto laughed and rubbed the back of his head, sensing that he would hear that a lot in the days ahead. The guard then moved to the pot that was raised above the fire pit, lifted the lid, and the pot's potent stew smelled strongly of Naruto. The guard asked the question Naruto had been considering. "Well, not to be rude, but I'm starving, how about some dinner?" "Sounds good." The sun had set about an hour earlier, but our blonde hero had been having trouble sleeping. Too much had occurred to him recently, and he needed to sort out some things, so he lay on the roof of the guardhouse and stared up into the night sky. First he considered what the chief thug, Had, and the guard had been discussing all day: spells? Wizards? He was aware that there was nothing like in any of the elemental kingdoms, and that this Skyrim was nowhere close to home. Second, it appeared that everyone was about as strong as the Konoha civilians. Naruto sneered, recalling how simple it had been to defeat the alleged dangerous Iron Dagger gang. He had perspired more while running down that hill to catch up to Had's carriage. If everyone was as weak as them, he would quickly grow bored. Naruto reflected on the beginning of it all, recalling the time he was visited by. Naruto rolled off the roof, moaned at the agony, and looked up to see Death staring down at him. "You okay?" a female voice questioned, inches from his ear. "Penny for your thoughts?" Naruto said, "It's not a good idea to sneak up on people, especially shinobi," as he got to his feet. He leaped onto the roof noiselessly and sat down beside Death, eager for a much-needed chat. Death responded, "Sorry, but you seemed like the perfect target to startle," with a naive smile on her face. Naruto recognized the irony in that statement, but he chose to ignore it. Death laughed in embarrassment as Naruto approached him and said, "Okay, that's ignorable, but I have one question that's been bothering me since I got here. Why did you drop me off here so suddenly, especially without telling me how you would tell me when you were going to send me back?" Naruto backed up, perplexed, as Death continued, "Sorry about that, I just wanted to get started on your wish. It's not easy finding a near duplicate of your universe, you know." "Duplicate of my universe? What are you talking about?" Taking a cue from Shikamaru, Naruto gazed up into the sky once more. "Well, you see, the thing is, I can't turn back the clock, no one can, but what I can do is find a universe similar to yours and let you relive your life there," he said. "So what you're saying is that I'd be living another Naruto's life, right?" Naruto turned to Death in an attempt to comprehend. "No, actually, it'd be your life, it would just be a slightly different world." Uncertain herself, Death shrugged and asked, "So what would be different?" "Who knows? Anything could be different. Some of the people you knew could be dead, some people you thought were dead could be alive, someone you knew could be completely different personality-wise, or they could even be physically different. You, yourself, could be physically different." "How so?" "Well, your hair could be a different color, or your eyes, skin, anything. You could even be a girl," Death said without showing any emotion. Naruto took a few moments to process it. To avoid waking any of the villagers, Death shushed Naruto as he screamed, "Wait a second. I could be a girl?" In a whisper, Death said, "Not so loud." "Sorry, but the possibility of me being a girl kind of freaked me out," said Naruto. "It's understandable, but do you have any other questions?" "Other than when am I getting out of here, not really. Even I don't know the answer to that question, Naruto-san," Death laughed. Naruto sighed deeply. "Of course you don't," he thought. Death put a soft touch on Naruto's shoulder. "Naruto, you have a new world to explore, new things to learn, and..." Death changed her feminine voice to sound like an old pervert. She also wore a Hawaiian shirt instead of a scarf and a pair of ridiculously big sunglasses. New women to Obelet, hee ha 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 ha, she said. What was that earlier about trying to not wake the village up? Naruto asked, palming his face. Naruto, don't you know? Only those who've had a close encounter with death can hear or see her, Death said, laughing loudly as she gradually faded from view. Naruto sighed slowly and made the decision to go to bed. If Death's words were any indication, things were sure to get interesting. The following day, Naruto woke up to the sound of muffled screams and shouts. He sat up and turned to face the source of the noise, noticing that all of the thieves' mouths were covered with some kind of cloth. He looked around the room, but the guard was nowhere to be seen, and when he looked out the window, he noticed that the sun had just begun to rise. He must be a morning person, Naruto muttered as he stood up and picked up his abandoned jacket and pants from the bedpost. He had thrown them away when he returned from his conversation with Death and fainted as soon as his face touched the pillow. Then he went outside to resume his quest, or he would have if he hadn't noticed the letter on the door, taken it from the only nail, and read it. Naruto, feel free to unwind until I get back. I left early this morning and am going to Whiterun to seek a prisoner escort. I should be back by midday. Naruto said, well, this is an interesting turn of events, and he put the note back on the nail, creating a new hole in the paper. He then chose to use the opportunity to test his body and determine how much of his previous strength had returned. Naruto located a tiny clearing close to the settlement, but far enough away that no one would notice anything he didn't want them to. His hands formed a recognizable T-shaped symbol. A dozen Naruto clones, each as prepared as the original Naruto, greeted him with the exclamation, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Alright boys, this is where things get interesting. We're in a new world, in our old body, and we need to test how much of our strength we still have, they all yelled in agreement before starting to work. Riverwood residents were going about their daily lives when they noticed a caravan approaching down the road. Some of the residents halted their activities upon realizing the caravan's composition, which included a dozen guards, 6 in the front and 6 in the rear, as well as a prison carriage between the two guard squads. The grouping came to a stop in front of the outpost, with 2 guards leaping from the carriage and entering. The second guard, the original Riverwood guard, pointed to the ground where the 5 bandits' heads were visible, rags still in their mouths, but they were all strangely silent. The new guard watched in horror and shock. After entering, one of the guards asked his partner, "Where are they?" The robbers started shouting through their rags, but it all sounded like incomprehensible babbling. The guard startled at this, believing the bandits had been beheaded. "I thought you said they were alive," he said. "They are alive. The man I described used some new magic I have never seen before. He simply disappeared into the earth, reached up from the ground like a man buried alive, and dragged them down until only their heads remained," the Riverwood guard clarified. If the new guard had glanced back and forth from his fellow guard, he would have seen that the bandits were, in fact, buried up to their necks. The guards searched the outpost, but they couldn't find Naruto. Well, where is he then? The second guard approached the door and took out the note, looking it over for any hints. "Wait, the note I left him," he said. The first guard asked, "You left him a note? What's to say he didn't just up and leave already?" The second guard was going to deny him, but he had a point. What was to say that Naruto hadn't already departed? A disturbance outside interrupted his thoughts. Both guards ran for the door and emerged to find 4 guards with their swords out, each at the throat of the same man. Naruto clarified, guys? You going to call them off?" "I just came back from training," and the Riverwood guard sighed in gratitude. When the Riverwood guard said, "Stand down men, he means us no harm," the guards withdrew their weapons from Naruto's throat, and the blonde gave a little sigh of his own. The other guard approached Naruto, wondering how he had defeated a whole group of infamous criminals when his entire force had never been able to find even the slightest hint as to where they were. The only signs they had ever discovered were the remains of caravans and the heaps of bodies. The guard asked authoritatively, "My fellow guard tells me you know of 2 spells in which no mage in Skyrim knows of, or has even attempted. Is this true?" Naruto nodded and demonstrated the 2 jutsu in question. "It's not as though you guys could use them or even try to block them." Following a brief demonstration that left all of the guards and any villagers in the vicinity in awe, the first guard, whom Naruto believed to be their captain, spoke once more. "I ask that you accompany us to White Run, for a full account of your deeds. If it turns out that you are telling the truth, you shall be rewarded the bounty offered for the capture of these petty thieves," the captain said. With real curiosity, Naruto inquired, "And if I refuse?" He emphasized his words by grasping the hilt of his sword. "Then we shall assume you are an enemy and take you in by force," he said. Naruto chuckled inside, "As though you guys could even scratch me." "I was just curious, shall we?" Naruto entered the outpost, and the 2 guards watched as he pulled the first bandit from the ground like a farmer pulling a vegetable. The bandit then swung at Naruto with his bound fists, but Naruto caught him by the hair as he started to collapse, and then he kneed the thief in the face. Needless to say, the thief was rendered unconscious once more. When no one moved, Naruto continued to pull the bandits out of the ground. After he had all of them out, he walked them out with the assistance of a few Kage Bunshin. Before long, all of the bandits were put into the mobile cell and the convoy was once again on its way. "Anyone else want to try some funny business?" Naruto asked, releasing a small amount of ki. He shaped it so that the thieves felt as though they had several knives aimed at their throats. In order to get a better view of the valley, Naruto sat atop the cage. Now that it was midday and the sun was shining on everything, he observed that the valley was as healthy as it could be. The trees were tall and had greenery on their branches, which would have been fun to climb but that a ninja like Naruto could have easily walked up. Where the road stopped, tall grass grew everywhere, and he could see other types of plants strewn about, different sizes, shapes, and colors. As they continued on, with a cliff on their left and the river flowing on their right, Naruto kept his senses sharp, just in case someone thought it would be a good idea to attack them. They took a sharp left turn over the stone bridge, avoiding the river that ran directly next to Riverwood, which is likely where they got their name, Naruto thought. He could see down the valley, but there seemed to be a natural fog hanging in the air, preventing his sight from taking in the vastness of the valley. "Keep your guard up, men. We never know if these scum may have compatriots waiting to attack and spring them loose," as the convoy leader apparently thought. Naruto stretched his senses to see what was nearby, but all he could detect was some wildlife, a few rabbits, and an elk. However, Naruto sensed something else, so he pursued it, curious to find out what it was, and his eyes flew open when he finally realized what he was sensing. Holy sh**t. This area has insanely high levels of natural energy. This is unlike anything I've ever felt. All of the natural energy in the valley was what Naruto was feeling. All of the birds, animals, plants, and even the grass itself appeared to be radiating nature chakra. The energy scale was entirely different from that of the elemental nations. It was like comparing a small stream to a thundering waterfall. Unfortunately, it didn't feel exactly like nature chakra, though it was close enough that he would need to retrain in order to get the hang of it. In his thoughts, Naruto considered the possibility of harnessing the amount of nature chakra. He thought, if I can figure out how to harness that energy, I would have to be careful to make sure it wouldn't rush straight into my body, otherwise I might end up like Arosenin and start looking like a frog. To be honest, he was afraid of the possibilities. A mild wind brushed Naruto's cheek, wiping away the little perspiration he had accumulated from his training as the route went on with trees on either side. Overall, the scene was strangely serene. Naruto noticed something in the distance as the convoy turned a sharp right. At first, he thought it was a mountain that had been haphazardly placed in the middle of a huge valley, but as the mountain's details became clear to him, he realized that it was actually a single building rising above the others. Its size would frighten any visitors entering the city while providing comfort to those who were fortunate enough to live there. Naruto shouted to the captain, "That's Whiterun, I presume," after noticing a lot of houses inside the massive siege wall enclosing the city. "Yes, it is our home, ruled by Balgruuf the Greater, our Jarl and leader. It is also where we are heading," said the captain. The Riverwood Guard exclaimed, "Beautiful sight, isn't it, Naruto?" Naruto let the grandeur of the little city fill his gaze and said, "Yes, quite impressive if I do say so myself, impressive and intimidating," adding, "It must be quite an amazing place, must also be important if that wall is to say anything about it." The captain released additional information. "Yes, it is. Whiterun happens to sit right in the middle of the great valley that takes up most of Skyrim's land. We also happen to be in a prime location for most of Skyrim's commerce," Naruto mused, setting the stage for a new adventure. The trees started to thin out as they continued on the paved road, revealing the valley the guard had told Naruto about. The sight astounded him. It seemed as though the valley never ended, making the Valley of the End appear like a tiny ditch in contrast. Mountains surrounded the valley on both its north and south sides, their jagged peaks rising high in an attempt to connect with the sky. The same river that had begun next to Riverwood had followed them down the path and joined with another river that flowed deeper into the valley. A big shadow quickly passed over them, ending Naruto's reverence. His training kicked in right away, and his head shot upwards. It was normal to have a shadow pass over you. It was the size of the shadow that caused Naruto to look up, and when he saw what had caused the shadow, he was astounded. Its body reminded Naruto of a bat, but its broad leathery wings kept it afloat. The creature defied Naruto's assumptions and flew with an otherworldly grace, and because of how smoothly it flew, Naruto was unable to estimate its true size. Its long, slender neck was covered in bronze scales that, even from the ground, appeared to be thick enough to withstand a lot of damage, and its slender tail flowed behind it like a whip being dragged, barely affecting its flight. It released a bowel-loosening roar that Naruto could easily hear, revealing one important fact: whatever it was big. Naruto wasn't sure which guard said it first, but someone yelled out the response he had been waiting for, "Dragon." The guard detail looked up and saw the beast flying. Naruto had no idea what the guards were talking about, but he felt his blood start to churn a little. He had been wondering if this world could provide him with a good challenge, and it appears he had found it. The guards started yelling at one another, some in low growls, some in panicky, high-pitched screams, like predators before a fight, and some even shouted out battle cries, promising to slay the foul demon. Naruto's sixth sense warned him to dodge, and he did so. As soon as he leaped from the cage's roof, the dragon let out a long roar, spewing a roasting inferno from its maw. The dragon double-backed and began to swoop in low, allowing itself to fly only a dozen or so feet off the ground. When Naruto turned to face the carriage, he saw that it had been completely roasted and that it was directly in the path of the dragon's attack. The dragon had aimed itself so that the first thing it struck was the horse, pulling the carriage and its drivers away. There was a skeletal, ashy remnant of the proud animal's former position, but no guards were visible. Naruto looked close and saw that the Riverwood guard had leaped off to the left with Naruto. He appeared to be a little confused by the jump, but otherwise unharmed. When a female death cry came from the blazing furnace, he was shown to be mistaken. He let out a loud groan and ran for the cage, then turned to see where the dragon had disappeared to and noticed that it was returning. When he finally arrived at the cage, Naruto peered inside and saw that Maria was still there, terrified, her tan skin covered in ash, but most importantly, she was still alive. Her eyes had gotten so big that they seemed to be about to burst from their sockets. He looked around the cage and saw that the other bandits weren't so fortunate, seeing 3 bodies, all of them roasting corpses, their once living, breathing bodies covered in flames. In the corner that was struck by the dragon's incendiary blast first, he saw a blackened skeleton, with the tendons barely holding the entire thing together. Grabbing one of the swords at his waist, Naruto added chakra to sharpen its edge. At first, the metal resisted, but eventually, he was able to do so because he had been bedridden for years. He used all of his strength to swing at the lock that kept the cage closed, and his reward was the tempered iron that broke as if it were made of glass. He then leaped inside, grabbed Maria, and leaped out of the cage while holding her bridle style. He turned to watch it fly away, banking to return and complete the task. Naruto put Maria down on the ground and retrieved his second sword, adding chakra to it as well. Naruto barely managed to escape as the dragon unleashed another flaming onslaught, demolishing what was left of the carriage. Whether the dragon hurt him or not, he yelled, "Alright, you giant fire-breathing snakeskin purse, come down and fight me." The dragon flew to the earth, and Naruto saw why the middle of its body was so bloated. Wait a minute, it's a fire-breathing lizard with wings? The dragon spread its legs, cushioning the impact, and landed close to Naruto, moving gently toward him. "Oh, he thought. This is incredibly intriguing." A cunningly evil smile appeared on his face. The dragon folded its wings and flattened them against its body as it drew closer to Naruto, allowing it unrestricted movement to engage in combat. When Naruto saw the impending attack, he leaped out of the way of the flames, landing on the dragon's back, stabbing it with both chakra-enhanced swords, and swiftly rolling away. The dragon followed suit, but it let out a long stream of fire breath. The dragon screamed in agony and turned back to Naruto. It snarled at him, attempting to bite down on our legendary blonde hero, but Naruto's reflexes were faster and he avoided the bite. Naruto finally got a good look at the dragon and was able to gauge its size, which he had to admit was impressive. The scales appeared to be some kind of natural armor, thick and strong, but given how gracefully it had flown earlier, Naruto had to assume that they were light, durable, and flexible in some way. The dragon's dangerous slit emerald eyes stared at him. Each eye had to be as large as his head and would likely fetch a respectable price if one could get an eye out. The dragon's toothy jawline must have measured more than 100 feet from snout to tail tip. Naruto twirled one of these swords and mocked, "Alrighty then, snake purse, let's dance." The creature lunged at him with its snake neck, attempting to bite off even a small portion of him. Naruto ducked to the side and swung at its armored neck. In contrast to earlier, when the sword struck the creature's natural armor, it snapped in, sending the blonde flying and swinging its neck at him like a club. When Naruto landed, the dragon was already charging at him. As fast as a Nara, Naruto devised a strategy for the combat and chose to try a technique that could harm the beast. Okay, the swords broke in half, even with chakra fed into them. "Talk about total crap," he said, throwing out his right hand, which caused a blue ball of chakra to appear. As he charged the dragon again, Naruto yelled, "Alrighty, scales for brain, let's see you block this, Rasengan." The dragon tried to chop him in half again, but Naruto leaped over it and slammed his attack onto the top of its scaly head, slamming the dragon into the ground. Naruto landed from his attack and started to move away. "Tough critter, aren't you? Well, looks like I'll have to up my game now, won't I?" Naruto turned around as the dragon started to stir again. The dragon opened its jaws again and unleashed a massive stream of fire straight at our blonde hero. The flame was extinguished by a sudden gust of wind, revealing Naruto standing unfazed and confident. Nice try, Pepper Breath, my turn. He threw out both of his arms, forming two Razengans. He fed more chakra into both attacks, making them larger. Okay then, try this on for size. Diodema Rasengan, double big ball swirling sphere. He swung both of his arms wide, allowing both attacks to slam into the dragon's head. The effect was immediately apparent, as the head started to spin in time with the attacks. The spin progressed down the neck and into the body, until eventually the entire body was spinning like a drill, totally uncontrollable and subject to Naruto's will. Together with the Razengans, Naruto raised the dragon and leaped a good 20 feet into the air. Time for the finisher. Dragon Hammer. Naruto cried out as he threw the dragon to the ground, dissipating both balls of chakra. The earth shook and echoed as the creature hit the ground with such force. After landing easily, Naruto approached the dragon-shaped crater and noticed that the creature was still breathing. "Wow, tenacious sucker aren't you?" he asked, approaching cautiously in case it was acting lifeless. The beast did, in fact, make one final attempt to bite Naruto, but he saw it coming from a mile away. He then unleashed one of Tsunade's well-known chakra-infused punches, and the dragon's head struck the ground again. You know? I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but it'll be fun to see if it still works, Naruto said as he activated the Rinnegan again. Alright, let's see if I remember how to do this. Naruto reached for the dragon's chest, focusing on it. His hand actually phased into the chest and felt around, finding what he was looking for, the smooth yet slimy feeling of something non-corporeal. He pulled as hard as he could, and the dragon's body started to flake as soon as his hand returned. Unaware of what was happening, but equally mesmerized by what he saw, Naruto leaped back. The dragon's body started to burn, turning into a smoldering heap of bones in a matter of seconds, but what really startled him was when light started to emerge from the bones themselves. It was an aurora borealis of colors, with some kind of non-corporeal rainbow ejecting from the bones and coming directly at Naruto. This is bad, Naruto thought, bracing himself for what was going to happen but not anticipating what actually happened. The aurora borealis swam around him like a tornado, but it wrapped him up like a lover's warm arms, and Naruto relished every moment of it. The mist soon cleared and Naruto found himself standing next to the bony remains of a dragon. He grinned, enjoying the challenge the dragon had presented, but things were not going well because he soon felt a pain in his throat. He coughed calmly at first, but then the word came to him, one simple word, one syllable, but with power behind it. He looked at the corpse, nothing gained, nothing ventured, and then Naruto yelled, "Fas!" The whole skeleton began to move, and little stones were flung a few feet away. Naruto felt his voice return and his throat normalize. He cleaned his throat in case. A recognizable voice yelled out, "Naruto! Are you all right?" Naruto turned to see the Riverwood guard sprinting in his direction, with the other guards immediately behind him. "Yeah, I'm fine. What about everyone else? Anyone injured?" Naruto cleared his throat after attempting to speak but coughing again. "Only their pride," replied the Riverwood guard. The captain yelled, "But how did you do that? I've never seen any destruction magic like that before. Nor have I seen anyone defeat a dragon that easily." Naruto turned to face the other guards, who were chatting among themselves. He could hear them, and they were equally as shocked as their captain. He, guess I'm stronger than I thought," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head. He turned to find Maria unconscious where he had left her. Naruto went to check on her and made sure she was unharmed. Her dark hair was stuck to her skin and her tan skin was covered in ash, but overall, she was fine. Her clothes had hardly been touched and were slightly singed but still intact. After picking her up and placing her unconscious head on his chest, Naruto approached the guards again and asked, "Ready to go?" They all nodded and shook in awe of the blonde, dividing their forces so that Naruto could carry the bandit in the center of the group. He stood in the shadows, unaware that a dark figure was watching them from behind a nearby home. If he hadn't, he would have known that the bright purple portion of his jacket would have protruded like a canary in a brain pie. Brain pie, yum. Perhaps I'll have that for supper. As the convoy started to climb the hill to the gates of White Run, the man's thoughts were quickly returned to the topic. So this is the anomaly I sensed, a young lad who can rip out a dragon's soul, the dark man said, laughing. And here I thought we Daedric princes were the only ones who could do that. I'll have to keep my eye on you, Uzumaki Naruto, he said, disappearing in a plume of smoke as his insane laugh reverberated throughout the room. Each house was elaborate and decorated with various forms of artistic work, and Naruto saw a blacksmith hammering away at a small length of cherry red-hot metal. He couldn't tell if it was to be a weapon or some sort of armor. The gates of Whiterun closed behind the convoy, and Naruto got his first close-up look at the entire city. Following the road, they went past a small marketplace with wooden booths encircling what Naruto could only assume was the town center. They then climbed a set of stairs and entered an even more aesthetically pleasing area than the one before, complete with a small garden in the middle of the district. "Fancy place you've got here," Naruto whistled, seeing that everyone was staring at them. "I guess it's not every day that you see a dozen guards waltz into town with some stranger holding a bandit," he said. After climbing several more flights of stairs, they arrived at what Naruto could only assume was the palace. Its enormous stone and wood structure rose into the sky, appearing to reach the clouds themselves, making everyone who saw it feel inconsequential. If I had been anyone else, they would have been successful. Another attempt to make everyone feel small. I wonder if the man who built this was trying to make up for something. A few guards were stationed outside a set of wooden doors, which opened inward, letting the convoy enter. Our sunshine-haired hero was not blind to the hall's vastness. He looked up and saw the wooden rafters stretching upward to the vast roof above. They climbed a few more steps to reach the top floor, where a huge fire pit was carved out of the middle of the hall and flanked by long tables. They continued to pass until the caravan stopped, having passed the table that was farthest from the stairs. Naruto, the captain, and the Riverwood Guard were left behind when the guards dispersed and went to their posts. The three of them continued to move forward until they were in front of the throne. Two men gazed at them, one on the throne and the other to their left. This must be the village leader, or whatever they are called here. The man stood with his back straight, as if a metal rod were in place of his spine. His clothing spoke of expensive tastes and regality, as if he was trying to impress everyone who looked at him. His face was adorned with a look of dignity that attempted to compensate for his balding head. He hardly registered anything to Naruto. The man looked as if a strong breeze would push him over. Probably like Danzo, only Danzo could hold his own. This guy is probably more like a politician. All bark with a bite like an old man who has lost all his teeth. The man sitting on the throne was the true spectacle. He slouched there as if he had been made to sit there bored to death, but he nonetheless exuded a sense of authority and dignity that made Naruto instantly admire him. He donned a pretty elaborate outfit, with a fur cloak draped over his shoulders and Celtic-patterned gold-woven kilt and shirt. A golden circlet encircled his head, with a big ruby serving as the focal point and numerous other gems scattered around it. The tall guy said in a feeble voice, "What is this?" "Captain, I demand an explanation at once." Naruto concluded that the man was undoubtedly a politician. "My Lord Proventus, this man defeated the Iron Dagger Gang by himself," he said, gesturing to Naruto. "Surely you jest. There is no way that this young man before us could have possibly found let alone defeated all of the Iron Dagger gang by himself, Proventus said, breaking the long silence that was only broken by the crackling of the fire. It's true, my lord, he did bring all 5 members of their gang to Riverwood. I could hardly believe it myself, the Riverwood guard said at that point. Then where are they now? All I see is you 3 and that maid this lad currently holds in his arms like a sleeping babe, replied Proventus. Naruto made the decision to speak up, saying, they died. The politician questioned incredulously, how? Naruto's subsequent comment caused the entire audience to go silent. When the flames roared through the halls like thunder once more, the man seated on the throne leaned forward, giving it his whole attention. A dragon killed them, he said. The stoic guy questioned, a dragon? Where did it attack? And how are you 3 alive? The captain bowed before his Jarl and stated, it attacked us, not far from here, while we were transporting the prisoners, Jarl Balgruuf. So they're called Jarls? It sounded like a measurement, and Balgruuf sat up, still interested in learning the answers to his earlier queries. The commander added, when it first attacked us, it spewed a mighty jet of flame upon the prisoner transport, killing all inside. Did it leave you be after it attacked? Balgruuf questioned, the entire crowd in rapt attention. Nay, it came back for us, seeking to finish the job. As the Riverwood guard concluded, Balgruuf stared at Naruto as though he had never seen him before. If it weren't for Naruto here, we all would have been reduced to ashes and sent to the Soundguard to the Hall of Valor, he said. Balgruuf's next query was, he defeated a dragon by himself? By what manner? Magic, my lord, magic I have neither seen nor heard of before. He can create copies of himself out of nothingness. When a new voice said, that is quite common within the world of magic, Naruto turned to his right to see the source and discovered a man in a dark purple cloak. Naruto felt an unearthly force about him that he had never experienced before. As the minutes went by, Naruto grew increasingly irritated with the man. Farengar, perfect timing, now we shall see if these ridiculous claims are true, Proventus sneered. May I see this new form of magic which they speak of? Farengar approached Naruto. Naruto gave a nod and moved his arms to give him enough room to join his hands while still holding Maria. Sure, I have no problem with a little bit of show and tell, Kage Bunshin, 7 Narutos said as they emerged behind the 3 in a little puff of smoke. During an inspection, they all stood like soldiers. Farengar approached the clones and examined one, entering its personal space. He poked it, amazed that he could actually touch it, and discovered that it was just as solid as a normal human. Incredible, even masters of conjuration magic have trouble making 2 or even 3 familiars, yet you just made 7 copies of yourself without even breaking a sweat, Farengar said. This is astounding, this truly is some new form of magic, or at least it's one I'm not familiar with. Naruto deadpanned, I've been getting that a lot lately. Proventus asked, well, but how did you defeat the dragon? Well, Naruto then explained the situation to them, stating that he had defeated the thing using another of his spells. Farengar said, incredible, absolutely incredible, do you remember what color it was? Naruto arched an eyebrow in response, wanting to know the color out of all the questions he could ask. Is he a collector of some kind? Farengar noted this and clarified, we have had numerous reports of dragons all around Skyrim, but the major difference was that there are different colors of dragons, each color seems to represent their strength, as if it changes when they grow stronger. Balgruuf's eyes widened and he sat up as much as he could, and the rest of the crowd gasped. Oh, well, I think it was bronzish, Proventus said, clutching his chest. Naruto looked about, unsure of how everyone was responding. Bronze, you're sure? Naruto nodded. Were the wings fading to a silvery gray? Farengar asked eagerly. Naruto recalled the fight and was fairly certain that the wings appeared thick and leathery, similar to a snake's skin. However, the more he considered it, the more certain he became that they also had a silvery hue. Farengar stepped back and said, "I believe so, yes," his eyes widening comically as though he had just been smacked. The hall fell silent once more, this time in admiration of Naruto's superhuman feat. Balgruuf stood and approached Naruto, and Proventus opened his mouth to say something, but was stopped by a raise of Balgruuf's hand. "You killed an elder dragon," he whispered at first, then loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You single-handedly killed an elder dragon, that is one of the rarer dragons within Skyrim," he said. "What is your full name, lad?" Balgruuf grinned and put his hands on Naruto's shoulders. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Jarl," Naruto added as an honorific, wanting to be sure he wouldn't be insulted. It wouldn't be a good day to piss off the most powerful man in the town. Balgruuf gazed at Naruto, waiting for his response. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, considering that you not only vanquished an elder dragon but also one of the most infamous gangs of thieves, I hereby proclaim that you are an ally of Whiterun and grant you the title of Thane of Whiterun. Will you accept?" It has a pleasant ring to it, and Naruto grinned broadly, grateful for the distinction. "Then it's settled, Proventus. See to it that Naruto is given property in Whiterun," Balgruuf said with a smile. "I am honored, Jarl Balgruuf, and I accept your offer," Naruto said, bowing his head. Proventus bowed at his lord's command and went out to see it through. "I am glad you accepted this position. The last man I offered this position turned it down," Naruto asked. "Really? Why would anyone do that?" Balgruuf stared down at Maria's sleeping figure, wondering who it was, and Naruto shook his head and laughed slightly. He said, "He was honored by my offer, but had to turn it down due to him having enough responsibilities as it were," Naruto continued. "And who is this?" Naruto asked as he glanced down at Maria's sleeping face. He saw a childlike innocence in it, reminiscent of the serious, focused expression on her face during his encounter with the iron daggers, but her eyes spoke a different language. She was afraid of being discovered and of the punishment that would be meted out to her. Naruto was powerless to do anything but feel terrible for her once she was captured. He continued, "This is Maria, one of the iron daggers. She was the sole survivor from the dragon's attack." Recalling her face as he seized her from the cage, she didn't want to die, and yes, she was a criminal, but she was still human. Her face was filled with pure horror that seeped out of every pore of her body. "And what, Thane of Whiterun, would you have us do with her?" Balgruuf asked, observing Naruto's attitude. "Is he really asking me to decide what happens to her?" Naruto's head snapped up and looked him in the eye. "I would ask that you spare her, she's suffered enough," Naruto said, shocking everyone in the room as he glanced down at Maria again, his thoughts coursing through him like a furious river. "And why is that?" Balgruuf inquired, genuinely interested in the reason behind Naruto's decision. The fire roared like a midsummer storm once more, and it seemed like an eternity before someone spoke. "I don't know, it's just a gut feeling of mine. The more I think about it, the more I can't help but think that she may have gotten caught up in this whole thing, like she was just a victim who was forced to play the part of a thief all along," the fire said. "If that is what you believe, then I trust your judgment," Naruto Uzumaki, Balgruuf instructed, and Naruto raised his head in, "But know this, if she causes any problems, you must be the one to deal with the consequences. Also, if the Empire comes looking for her, you must be the one to deal with them." Naruto said, "I understand, my Jarl," letting the salutation fall from his lips as he observed Balgruuf grinning. He said, "So, now what?" Balgruuf turned and started to return to his chair, signaling Naruto to leave. "Now you take a tour of our fine city. Once Proventus has finished his duties and acquired you a home, I shall send someone to escort you there," he said, not wanting to overstay his welcome and unintentionally offend someone. When Naruto stepped outside again, he noticed that the sun had just barely reached the halfway point of the sky. He gazed down at the city, taking in the breathtaking view from his vantage position, but was cut short by the sound of his hunger growling. He turned to one of the guards near the door and inquired where he might get something to eat. "Of course I'm hungry. I used a bit of chakra in that last fight, plus I don't think I've had anything to eat since I got here," he said, laughing. Naruto thanked the man and began to descend the stairs he had climbed earlier that day. "You can always try the bannered mare, or there is the drunken huntsman," he said. "I guess I should go with the bannered mare. Anything that has the word drunken in the title makes me uneasy. It's almost as if they're shady or something." While walking through the town, Naruto stopped hearing the clashing of metal. He turned to see what was causing the sound and was astounded by what he saw: a big building close to the palace with a vast dome that spread wide like a giant's shoulders. It was a nice sight, and he might have to go check it out later. Naruto proceeded until he reached another flight of descending stairs. He surveyed the lower marketplace and noticed that the majority of the buildings in the area had signs outside of them. With a shrug, he went into the square and examined the signs until he reached the bannered mare. He ascended the few stairs and waltzed in. After entering, Naruto's eyes quickly adapted to the dim lighting. The room was small and charming, with warmth from a central fire filling every nook and cranny, giving Naruto a cozy feeling. He looked around and discovered an open table close to the corner, and a few seconds after he sat down, a woman's voice asked, "Can I get you something to drink?" Her appearance made Naruto feel comfortable. She wore a rather simple dress, a white shirt with sleeves that covered her arms but left her shoulders uncovered. Her short ebony hair gleamed as if it were spun from the finest silk, and her dark skin seemed to shimmer in the firelight. "Actually, I'm not from around here, so I don't really know what's good or not," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. He wasn't sure whether they had any sake or even if they knew what it was, so he wasn't afraid to ask for some. "I think I know what you may like," she said with a smile. "Thank you, miss." She moved away after saying, "Sadia, my name is Sadia," and Naruto noticed something strange as he watched her leave. Do all waitresses carry short swords? Naruto abruptly stopped thinking and turned to face the source of the new voice. He saw a man with long, dark hair, the only thing darker than his robe, and a little blade at his side. "Enjoying the view?" he asked. "More like wondering if people know something that I don't," Naruto said, gesturing to the weapon by his side. The foreigner glanced down and understood the joke. The man sat down in the chair across from Naruto and said, "Well, with the war going on, everyone seems to think that it's a good idea to always be armed." The man appeared as though Naruto had recently acquired a second head. "War? What war?" "The Stormcloak Rebellion. How do you not know about it?" "Well, I'm new here, so I'm still learning what's going on and such," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. "Ah, so a foreigner just like me?" "Pretty much," said Naruto with a sly smile, and Sadia decided to return at that moment carrying 2 bottles. Sadia turned to Naruto and said, "Here you go, one for each of you," adding, "If you need anything else, just ask," before she winked and walked away. When she was out of earshot, the mystery man whistled a little. Naruto turned to face the man and said, "I think she likes you, lad," with a little laugh. "Maybe, but back on topic though, you never did introduce yourself." The stranger held out his hand to Naruto and said, "Ah, where are my manners? My name is Sam Gaven, nice to meet you."